Good afternoon and welcome to the 857 Governance, Administration and Finance Committee. We have all committee members present today, and we'll start by going through our run sheet. My understanding is there's an item 6.1 which is currently starred, which people would like to unstar. So we have one start item of 5.1. So I will move that item. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson, all in favour? Great. Moving along. Okay, so 6.1, the monthly financial report. What have I done? Can you go back to the minutes? Okay, cool. Confirmation of minutes. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes? Nope. Okay. Mover, Councillor Wilkinson, seconder, Councillor Gates, all in favour to accept the confirmation of minutes. Thank you. Okay. So 6.1, financial report. Questions?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm referring to page 24. Which is the financial statement, and I'm a little confused about the cash assets, which are listed at $515,121,000. In the footnote, in point number 1, it identifies the cash assets including investments. So there's $394.6 million of constrained infrastructure charges. I'm interested in asking why Gold Coast water and waste reserves are there, and whether that reserve is also for infrastructure. And I'm also querying the very last point, number 4, says other cash items, and it's negative 153.4, and I'd like to know what that represents, please.
Thank you. Through the Chair, thank you for the question. Just in relation to the first part is the legally constrained reserves, which you're aware of, that's the $395 million that sits in that space from there. Yeah. And then the other reserves in total, which includes the water and waste reserves, which is at Council's resolution, so that's not legally constrained in that space. That then totals as part of the other reserve balances, which is $274 million in total. In relation to the negative, that's just representing to councillors, as you're aware, that we haven't borrowed at that stage in the financial year, and we had only borrowed in the June period. So that was, if you remember, we discussed that at the previous GAF. So that's representing that in the future we've got borrowings coming from there. So our final cash balance doesn't represent the total balance of the reserves at that stage until the borrowings came through in June.
Okay, so the Gold Coast water and waste reserves,
yes,
that's been as a result of a council resolution to put those funds aside, but they're not constrained for the delivery of infrastructure. Is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, so when we're looking at that restraint for infrastructure charges, do we know what is the restraint for council resolutions?
So the total of other reserves is $274 million. The legally constrained is $395, and that's made up of all the strategic priorities reserves, the water and sewage reserves, all the various other reserves that sit within councils decided to put money aside for, and can at any stage in the future change that.
Chair, could I just ask one more question? So I just had a question just about the water utilities revenue.
Yes.
It's tracking behind because of all the wet weather that we've had, and I'm conscious this is a May report, end of May report. Do we expect that trend to continue, and is it going to have a significant impact on end-of-year financials, or where do we feel like that's going to land?
Yep. In terms of the water side of things, yes, the water revenues, as we understand it, stayed below budget and below forecast, and that's continued on that path through till June. It's offset a little bit by the bulk water charge, but as you would have seen in previous reports to water and waste, there's also other expenses that have occurred within the water business as a whole. So yes, we have seen that continued trend of the water below revenue at 30th of June.
So does that change how we forecast for 25-26?
I'd have to check with the water business as to how they've done that forecast. I couldn't answer that directly at this stage. But it would certainly be something we'd need to take into consideration as we go through the year.
And just one other question.
Sorry, through the Chair, just to provide some further information. Yes, we will affect forecasting depending on the weather conditions. Depends also on how much water gets used. At the end of June, it looks like we're about 16 million below our revenue target for the Gold Coast water revenue. It's quite significant.
Thank you. That was a useful figure. I just wanted to other expenses as well. So beyond the Invest Gold Coast payment, what other cost drivers are contributing to the overrun, and do we expect any further overspending as we head towards end of year reporting?
In terms of the other expenses there, that is, not to be honest with you, I probably can't answer that directly at the moment. Let me just have a look to see if I can identify what that might be. There is sometimes some insurance payments that go in there which were timing related during the year. Let me just see if we've got details of that in there.
Through the Chair, I thought this question might get asked, so I pulled up the end of May financial report to have a look at their other expenses myself. There is sort of overs and unders area all over the place, but the insurance premiums, Jeff, you're correct. That's one item. I think it's about $1 million over expended in that space.
The other area through that EGM is contributions made to our controlled entities go through other expenses. The budget for those was sitting within materials and services, I understand, but I'll just need to confirm that and come back to you.
Thank you.
Contributions is part of other expenses.
And just one other, I guess, query, just in relation to, you know, the conversation around cash and debt. I guess it was just a request, really, that I don't know how other councillors feel, but myself, I would love, even if it's a regular quarterly workshop or, you know, something where we can, the councillors who have an interest or would like to really have more understanding on that ongoing through the year, that we could formulate some sort of a workshop outside of committee. And I would really welcome that if there is an opportunity for us to do that.
Oh, through the Chair, we definitely would welcome that. We did do some workshops last year, some showcases. We'd like to continue that with the Chair's support, particularly considering the challenging budget that we had this financial year for 25-26. It'd be great, I think, if we have some regular workshops leading up to the budget, but probably, to be honest, starting in September.
It might be worthwhile, given a number of newer councillors are looking at doing the company directors course, potentially working with a facilitator on that too, and having their case studies be quite relevant.
I'm sorry to do this, but I need to go back to my question about Gold Coast Water and the cash component in this statement. I don't understand how it can be there, given they're a separate entity, and that funds can't be transferred between council funds and Gold Coast Water, as we clearly established during budget discussions, because we would have liked to have been able to not put up the service charges and take the money from elsewhere. So how can it form part of this statement when it can't form part of the operations as a whole?
Okay, through the Chair. Gold Coast Water is a commercial business unit. It's not corporatised, so it's not actually a legally separate entity. The legal entity as a whole is council. And so what you're seeing here is the financial information related to council as a whole, which includes our commercial business units of both water and waste. So it's treated separately, as you say, in terms of determining its full cost pricing, and there's certain regulations that it has to comply with and legislation. But in terms of council as a corporate entity, including our financial statements and our budget as a whole, we include the commercial business units as part of that.
Okay, thank you. That makes it clear. Thank you.
Any other questions? Someone like to move that? We'd love you to move it, Councillor Gates, but you're not a committee member, which also makes me, I'm going to have to go back to confirmation of minutes because I didn't pick that up before. Councillor Fowler.
Happy to move it, Chair.
Seconder. Councillor Wilkinson. All in favour? Great, thank you. Excellent. Well, I had it picked up for me. So we will just redo the vote for confirmation of minutes. So our mover was Councillor Wilkinson. Can I have seconder Councillor Curtis? All in favour? Okay, very good. Thank you. Audit and Risk Committee. Do we have a presentation on that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we do. Matthew Walker, our Chief Risk and Audit Officer.
Great, thank you.
Walking in now, being short and sharp.
Thank you, Chair. A brief presentation on the internal audit plan and the associated attachment, which we are requesting for adoption at Council. Next slide, please. The Chair and I had a brief discussion about just making sure that GAF and Council had an orientation of the internal audit function and its role at providing assurance over Council. So this is just a brief presentation to support the adoption of the audit plan. Next slide, please. So in order to orient internal audit, I do have to describe the other lines of defense we have for assurance. And this 3 lines of defense model is from the Institute of Internal Auditors, describes 3 lines of assurance. The first line being management. Management have direct oversight of controls doing their job, whether that's accounts payable or safety in the field or whatever the assurance area might be, that is management. That's first line. Second line is oversight functions, policies, governance, management frameworks, the health and safety framework, project management framework. You can identify these mostly because they have management in their title. That's second line functions. My risk management function is one of those. And then finally, third line of defense. This is internal audit, independent oversight over the entire operations. So the internal audit plan is defined to provide assurance over first and second line functions. And that's what we're asking Council to adopt today. Internal audit's independent oversight of the operation of Council. So that's the 3 lines of defense. Next slide, please. This comes with an independent structure. This was debated as part of the 2023 restructure. And my role, the Chief Risk and Audit Officer, embodies what the Institute of Internal Auditors call the Chief Audit Executive. I am responsible for the delivery of the independent oversight function. To ensure that that is independent, I have a 3-way reporting line. First to Paul Callender, my direct report. However, I have an independent escalation to the CEO and to the Audit and Risk Committee, which comes through GAF to Council. And this is how we maintain independence in case there was ever any need of escalation. Since I've taken the role, I have not been required to use any of these escalation paths. That's a testament to management's willingness to participate in audits, action audit items, and also the collaboration between EGMs on audit-related matters. For the Audit and Risk Committee itself, that's where we report as the internal audit function the outcomes of our audits in detail. And that's where management make a commitment to themselves and to the Audit Risk Committee to do those actions. Next slide, please. And finally, the risk-based planning approach, which culminates in the plan that we're asking you to adopt today. The internal audit independently review all the city services and then undertake a risk management process to identify the audits that we will undertake. And last year, we delivered the largest audit plan in Council's history on the back of advice from the Audit Risk Committee that there was a heightened risk profile in the organization. We did 31 audits. This year, we're proposing a slightly moderated plan.
Sorry, could you just say that again a little bit slower? So what was the recommendation from the Audit and Risk Committee?
Through you, Chair, the recommendation of the Audit Risk Committee was that because of all the organizational change, whether that be through structure or policy reviews or personnel change, that the organization was facing a slightly higher risk profile than baseline. And because of that, the recommendation was to do more audits. and we did. So we have undertaken additional assurance through the course of 24-25, more than we have ever done previously, 31 audits. This year we are proposing a slightly moderated plan. The audit plan describes why we think we can reduce the number of audits. There has been improvements in risk management. There's been improvements in policy. So these things have moderated our risk profile somewhat. And the structure's been in place for a while, and we're maturing as an organization in that. So we are proposing a slightly reduced plan. Internal audit consult with a series of individuals and the Audit and Risk Committee through developing that plan to ensure that it's got good coverage of council's risks. And that is the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I had just a question around the actual plan itself. And I guess when we're looking at more, with emerging areas, so when we're talking about cyber safety, climate response, or AI governance, it's a moving beast. There's so many changes. And how do we make sure that the plan stays compliant and aligned with such emerging industries, I suppose?
The first is that through the planning process, we do consider emerging risks. So, for example, in the 24-25 plan, we did an audit on AI governance and have delivered that audit with recommendations to the CTO, to SPT governance data governance area. So we do try to capture emerging risk. If we haven't adequately forecast an emerging risk, the other mechanism is that we hold contingency in the plan on purpose for exactly this reason. So we have a defined set of contingency that we will use at our discretion in consultation with the Audit Risk Committee or other concerned stakeholders, which include all of you. You can call me at any time, say I'm concerned about X, and we can consider it for inclusion in a plan amendment to do another audit using contingency. That's how we would manage it, Councillor.
I just had one other one, and that's it, Chair, if you'd allow it.
Yep.
Looking at the actions register for the Audit and Risk Committee, I was just questioning the councillor fraud training. I was unsure as to who recommended that or how it came up and how we would use that in our roles as elected representatives.
Through you, Chair, that was a conversation that occurred at the Audit and Risk Committee, that we are providing fraud training to our staff. And the question was, should we make that available to councillors? And so an action was taken by the manager of that area to determine whether that would be feasible and possible to impart that benefit on councillors as well. That's as simply as the conversation went, Councillor.
Further to that, another area which we'll look at training for councillors is on AI use, which can actually relate into, well, it's not necessarily fraud and corruption, but for example, if you're using Grok or ChatGPT to help design a speech that you're going to do in council, and you're feeding closed committee meeting documents into that, you're very well breaching your confidentiality requirements because you're providing that to an open data source. So we need to understand those things. There's going to be training coming for us on that as well. And I'll just also mention while we're there on page 31, 0.428. So in the last Audit and Risk Committee, Queensland Audit Office noted their recommendations and insights on audit committees in local government. So Mr. Walker's going to be presenting on a plan to incorporate that at our next one. I think that's going to be quite useful. One of the compelling elements of that is there is now an obligation on those audit and risk committees chairs to ensure that there's a level of knowledge by all committee members, and particularly referring to councillors, because the other committee members have all got a audit background and experience. So in terms of the workshop you requested, I've also requested a workshop particularly around audit training, and I've first offered that to Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Martin in their capacities, but we can open that up as well, just so that there's a real kind of understanding of, you know, what we should and shouldn't know on audit as well. But I'm really looking forward to that one. I think there's going to be a couple of recommendations for the city on that, so that'll be good. Any other questions on that? I had one. It's not a concern. If you remember when we did our risk profiling and we altered the name of, I think it's natural environment, is that what it's called? Right. And we did that intentionally with the idea to make it all about the environment, physical environment on the ground, and to allocate climate change policies and the like more to a compliance element. That has fallen into that natural environment one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what block it's put in. But my concern is that the natural environment becomes climate change. And it's not about that natural environment consideration of, which is what was council's intent, but it's not a big deal. We just need to look at that from risk profiling, make sure that we're keeping on that. Any other questions on that document? Okay. Mover for that? Councillor Wilkinson. Seconder, Councillor Martin. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Wilkinson? No. Okay. All in favour? Okay. Great.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. So policy reviews, I understand next committee could be a big one for policy reviews, but do you wish to speak to that, Mr. Callender?
Through you, Chair, happy for Vanessa to come out, as is normal practice in GAF, and just give a very short update. Given there's one policy, it will be very short.
You're right. Good afternoon, through the chair. There is one policy on the agenda today, and one of the reasons there is one policy on the agenda is because it's been reviewed with a suite of other policies that are classified as organisational policies. It does relate and have a relationship with our revised code of conduct. So whilst we're only bringing one to you today, there's 15 policies that we've actually reviewed inside the organisation in the last month, and actually over the last 6 months, because we've been engaging extensively with all staff across the city in relation to those policy changes. So I'm happy to send any notes as required in relation to those ones. The one in front of you today is the Good Working Relationships Policy. It's a bit of history to this policy, as I understand. It was first established back in 2005. It was established on the back of an incident or a series of complex complaints that had occurred between some key staff members that also involved councillors. It was designed, I suppose, to put in place some controls around behaviours and interactions between councillors and staff at that point. When we've looked at the content in relation to this policy, the content very much relates to a series of workplace harassment and discrimination laws that would have largely been in place back in 2005, but I would say particularly over the last 20 years have certainly strengthened, and to a point where we've actually assessed the clauses in the policy, we feel the legislation is strong enough that we don't need the policy as well, and that's what we've prepared and presented to you today.
Questions? Other than love to know what happened, which caused the policy in the first place?
Well, I'm dying to know the answer to that. No, through you, Chair, I just wanted to ask one question. So by retiring this policy, do you see that there are any residual gaps between the duplicate legislative content? Is there anything in this policy that isn't duplicated?
No. So I can give you, through the chair, I can give you an example. So recently the federal government has strengthened its legislation, for example, around sexual harassment. And as a result of that, that actually triggered a change in our state workplace health and safety laws. We've then subsequently strengthened our frameworks internally in the city around how we actually manage proactively sexual harassment in the workplace, as well as how we respond to those instances if they occur.
Great, thank you.
That's just one example.
Good-o. So we're moving, as we know, from a model the city has had in the past of, if you think of an issue, you write a policy about it, to consolidating everything and not having policies where we need to. And in the meantime, we're preparing content for Mr. Paul Callender's future coffee book on all the interesting stories of why policies got created in the first place. Okay, any comments about that one? No, all good. Do I have a mover? Councillor O'Neill. Seconder, Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Very good. And forgot to welcome Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hamill. Rightio, city contracting plan.
Good afternoon. Thanks. I thought for this plan, I haven't got a presentation today, but I thought it would be worth just probably running over a little bit of the history as to why we have the strategic contracting plan. So within the local government regulation, there is actually two models that council can adopt. It can adopt the default model, which prescribes dollar thresholds and when we can invite tenders and quotes. So that for medium-sized contracts within the regulation, it's 3 quotes between $15,000 and $200,000, and it's public tenders from $200,000 upwards. So you can imagine an organisation our size with the budget that we've got, that creates a lot of tenders and quotes that need to be called for reasonably low values of spend in comparison to our budget. So in 2007, Council adopted the strategic contracting procedures, which ultimately gives us some flexibility around how we contract with, or how we enter into contracts as an organisation. So each year following the budget, we need to adopt the strategic contracting plan, but we can't adopt it obviously before the budget is adopted because we don't know what it is that we've adopted that we're going to be spending our budget on. Within the strategic contracting plan, it covers a number of things around the principles of which we'll enter into contracts. We keep that reasonably broad in the plan because we have a number of procurement processes that we are running for various programs of work, which pretty much, if you think about it, is formed as part of our capital budget adoption. We have a number of programs in there with the estimated spend that we're going to go to market for. The types of contracts, particularly the ones that require a strategic contracting plan, so they're the ones over $100 million, and you'll note within the plan we've actually called those, there's 3 planned for this coming financial year that we've called out within the plan. And a market assessment, and I'm not sure if you've read the market assessment, but the market assessment tells us that we're going to have a continuation of the existing pressures on pricing around construction materials, particularly given we've got migration still occurring to the state, we've got demands in housing, and the construction sector has those increasing prices, and it's right across the board, even within the professional services. So we've got a market assessment in there which just talks about some of the challenges we'll face as an organisation, and they'll continue obviously right up through to more than likely the Olympic Games in 2032. Probably just some call-outs. I mentioned the 3 significant contracts. One of those is the PSP, which Infrastructure Gold Coast is running, which will have a number of services in there in relation to delivering on the Capital Works program. That's estimated to be around the $100 million mark. And it will include services such as estimators, quantity surveyors, designers, and there's a mentoring program designed to go with that. So those people will be embedded within the organisation and work with those staff within Infrastructure Gold Coast who help deliver on the Capital Works program. We've also got a panel of electrical infrastructure contractors that's worth about $175 million over 5 years, and the Surfers Paradise Revitalisation Project, which I believe at the moment is estimated around $100 million.
We've got this on our agenda in open, but is this not a confidential document and confidential figures? Is it not?
I can answer. I don't believe there's anything within that.
You've not? Okay.
Yeah,
I've just got confidential agenda on the document, and I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
I don't believe there's anything in there which requires confidentiality. Ideally, it would be good, obviously, for the public to be able to see, where the organisation is going with its strategic contracting procedures. Yeah, and that's
Councillor Hamill, sorry. Did you have a comment through the chair?
Was just adding, Chair, that I think that's the whole point of significant contracting plans, is they're public facing and meant to be in open.
Yeah. I got thrown because my document here has confidential written on it. I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, that's it.
And sorry if I might add there, Chair. Yeah, that's obviously to keep the organisation accountable when it does adopt the strategic contracting model, because it's not now covered by those the default contracting procedures.
Thank you.
No questions at all, Chair?
Any questions? Other than the number that we've got for the contract for Surfers Paradise Revitalisation, I thought was considerably bigger than what we put in the budget. Maybe I remembered it incorrectly.
Sorry, Chair. I believe that figure is under review, because I think there is some other work that's been identified that can be done at the same time, is what I understand. So,
okay, great. Any other questions? No. Okay. Do I have a mover? Councillor Fowler, seconder, Councillor O'Neill, all in favour? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Nice, healthy budget there for Surfers Paradise. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just go back for 2 seconds at 6.3. I just wanted to make sure that the minutes reflected that I did vote in favour of it. I was raising my hand and I started itching my ear, so I don't know if it... I just wanted to make sure that it was recorded that I was in support of that.
So that's all the items. Do we have any general business items? I don't believe we do. I just thought we might, I will close the meeting and then we may stay around just to have a discussion about those workshops that we spoke about. So closing the meeting at 2:04. Thank you.